Tuesday morning, April 20th, 1999, at Columbine High School in the quiet suburb of Littleton, Colorado, students were arriving for what seemed like an ordinary spring day. The sun was out, the chatter of teenagers filled the hallways, and the promise of graduation loomed ahead. But by midday, the world would watch in horror as Columbine became synonymous with tragedy. Two students, Eric Harris, age 18, and Dylan Klebold, age 17, would unleash a meticulously planned assault on their own school. Their rampage lasted less than an hour, but in that time they killed 13 people, wounded more than 20, and terrified countless others. The Columbine Massacre was not just another crime, it was a cultural turning point, forcing America to confront the specter of school shootings, teenage alienation, and the terrifying new face of mass violence. To understand Columbine, we must first understand its perpetrators. Eric Harris was born in Wichita, Kansas, the son of an Air Force pilot. His family moved frequently before settling in Littleton. On the surface, Eric was smart, charming, and good with computers, but beneath that exterior, he was deeply troubled. His journals revealed seething rage, psychopathic tendencies, and fantasies of destruction. Dylan Klebold, in contrast, was described by friends as shy, awkward, and prone to depression. He came from a loving family, excelling academically but often feeling like an outsider. Where Eric embodied cold calculation, Dylan embodied despair. Together they became a lethal combination. Eric, the planner and manipulator, Dylan, the follower, yearning for belonging. The boys bonded over violent video games, a shared fascination with guns, and a dark nihilism. In their minds, they weren't planning just a shooting, they were plotting an act of terror to rival Oklahoma City. Their plan was far more ambitious than the tragedy that unfolded. Harris and Klebold envisioned Columbine not as a shooting, but as a bombing. Inspired by the Oklahoma City attack in 1995, they constructed propane bomb devices meant to kill hundreds in the school cafeteria. The plan was chillingly detailed. Step 1. Plant the bombs in the cafeteria timed to explode during the busiest lunch period. Step 2. Wait outside with guns, mowing down survivors as they fled. Step 3. Detonate car bombs in the parking lot as first responders arrived. But the bombs failed. Faulty wiring spared hundreds of lives that day. And so, armed with shotguns, semi-automatic rifles, and homemade pipe bombs, Harris and Klebold entered their school, not as students, but as executioners. At 11:19 a.m., the nightmare began. Outside the school, near the west entrance, Harris and Klebold opened fire on students eating lunch on the grass. Their first victim, Rachel Scott, an aspiring writer, was killed instantly. Her friend Richard Castaldo was critically wounded. Panic rippled through the campus. Students thought it was a senior prank, until gunfire shattered the illusion. Harris and Klebold stormed toward the building, shooting anyone in their path. The cafeteria cameras recorded students fleeing as smoke from small bombs filled the room. As chaos erupted, teachers and students scrambled for safety, locking classroom doors, hiding under desks, or escaping through broken windows. Inside Columbine High School, an ordinary day had transformed into a battleground. The library became the epicenter of the carnage. At 11:29 a.m., Harris and Klebold entered the library, where dozens of students were hiding under tables. What followed was 7 minutes of calculated terror. The killers taunted their victims. They mocked students for their faith, their appearance, or simply their presence. They laughed as they fired, showing no remorse. In those 7 minutes, 10 students were executed. Cassie Bernal, later mythologized for allegedly declaring her belief in God, was among those slain. By the time they left the library, the massacre had reached its peak. Yet, disturbingly, the shooters did not storm the rest of the building. Instead, they wandered aimlessly, firing sporadically, as though the weight of their actions was beginning to press down. By 12:05 p.m., less than an hour after the attack began, the massacre ended. Harris and Klebold returned to the library, where their rampage had begun. Sitting among the carnage they had created, they turned their weapons on themselves. In the end, 13 victims lay dead, 12 students and 1 teacher, William Dave Sanders, who had died heroically after shepherding dozens of students to safety. Harris and Klebold's suicide left investigators with more questions than answers. Why had they done this? Why had they chosen Columbine, and could anything have stopped them? The response to Columbine was chaotic. Law enforcement surrounded the school but hesitated to enter, fearing more explosives. Parents rushed to the scene, desperately searching for their children. News helicopters hovered overhead, broadcasting the horror live into millions of homes. By evening, Columbine was no longer just a local tragedy. It was a global headline. The media dissected every detail: the shooters, trench coats, their video games, their music, their alleged bullying. Overnight, Harris and Klebold became symbols of teenage rage and societal failure. In the weeks after Columbine, myths spread like wildfire. Stories of a trenchcoat mafia, a group of goth outcasts, dominated headlines, though it was never a real organized group. Claims that the killers were bullied relentlessly became common, though evidence showed they were not the powerless victims some imagined. Another enduring myth was Cassie Burnell's last words, the story that she declared her faith when asked if she believed in God. In reality, another student, Valen Schneur, survived after such an exchange. Yet the story persisted, turning Cassie into a martyr figure for many. These myths reflected a nation struggling to make sense of senseless violence. People searched for easy answers in video games, music lyrics, and fashion choices. But the truth was far more complex. Columbine forever changed how America thought about schools. It was no longer unthinkable that students might massacre their classmates. School safety protocols transformed overnight. Lockdown drills, armed officers, security cameras, and emergency response plans became the new norm. The massacre also reshaped law enforcement tactics. The old contain and wait model was replaced by active shooter response, a strategy where officers are trained to immediately confront shooters to minimize casualties. But beyond policies, Columbine scarred the American psyche. The images of terrified students escaping through windows and grieving parents clutching photographs of their children remain seared into memory. For a generation, Columbine was the loss of innocence. More than 2 decades later, Columbine remains both a tragedy and a warning. In the years since, school shootings have multiplied. Virginia Tech, Sandy Hook, Parkland, Uvalde. Each time the shadow of Columbine looms, Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold were not just killers, they became dark archetypes, studied by psychologists, criminologists, and unfortunately, even idolized by disturbed copycats. Columbine matters not just because of the lives lost that day, but because of the questions it forces us to keep asking. How do we identify the warning signs of violence? How do we balance freedom with security? And most hauntingly, how do we stop the next Columbine before it begins? For the families of the victims, April 20th will always be a day of grief. For the world, Columbine is a chilling reminder that evil can strike anywhere, even in the heart of a high school on an ordinary spring morning.